Work besties, we're gonna be playing a little game today. A little true or false work edition. Are you in? I'm game. Let's just jump right into it, shall we? We're gonna start with the first one here. So true or false, I'm gonna give you a moment to answer. True or false, working from home saves companies money. We're starting easy here. I hope everyone gets this right. I'll just give you a moment, get the old ticker moving. All right, you got your answer? Little drum roll. It's true. It's true. I think you knew that. I hope you knew that. According to Global Workplace Analytics, companies save around $11,000 per employee working from home. That's a stat I didn't know. Most of these savings obviously come from things like utilities and rent, which does make sense. All right, next question. How we feeling? Strong start? Maybe not? Okay, let's get into it. True or false? More than half of CEOs move on in less than 5 years at a company. That includes voluntary or involuntary. So the turnover rate for CEOs. True or false? It's true. I feel like I knew this one. I feel like once you get to that level of being in the C-suite, the lifespan of staying in the C-suite at a company is a lot shorter, under 5 years. So a Harvard Law survey found that 39% of CEOs hold a tenure of 1 to 5 years and 13% move on in under a year, totaling 52%. So it's just over that half. Next one, true or false? By 2025, which is not that far away, 22% of the entire American workforce, so we're talking USA specific here, is expected to be working remotely. 22%, what do you think? It's true. It is true. Yeah, according to Forbes, 32.6 million Americans, which equates to 22% of the workforce, will be working remotely come 2025. We're still seeing that gradual increase in remote work in the US. I know we hear a lot in the news about, this company is returning to office in this company, but remote work it's here to stay. I don't even know if that's controversial or a hot take because I feel like it's just the facts at this point. Yes, some companies are shifting back. It's gonna be very interesting to see what happens in the next 5, 10, 15 years, if we're gonna continue to see remote work gradually increasing, when it's gonna plateau, or if we kind of, hit a point where things start to shift back the other way and we start to decrease work from home. What do you think is gonna happen? Number 4, true or false? A quarter of employees would take a 10% pay cut if it meant they could work remotely versus having to be in office. What do you think? What would you answer to this? Would you take a 10% pay cut if it meant working remote versus having to go into an office? This is false. That number is actually 42% of people, according to a survey conducted by USA Today, would take a 10% pay cut if it meant working remote, which is interesting. I feel like there's just so many factors that go into play because initially my mind is like, you're doing the same work, the same output, and now the value of it's less because you're not physically in a space, which I don't agree with. But then the other side, it's like, okay, if you take a 10% pay cut, but now you're not spending money on the commute, maybe you can live in a more affordable place because you don't have to be within a certain radius of the office building itself. So that might save you a ton of money with cost of living, housing prices. So you would actually come out potentially in the positives. I think there's so many different factors to consider here. But according to this study, a lot of people would consider taking a little bit less money if it meant working remote. 5, true or false? Over half of companies in the US do not allow remote work. What do I think? Over half the companies in the US. Yeah, I'm gonna go false. It is false, but I feel like false makes sense also. So Forbes found that 44% don't allow any remote work. So 44% of companies in the US don't allow any remote work, which depending on the company and the industry, potentially remote work is just not an option because it's just not a reality for all jobs out there, which I feel like we know, which is interesting because 16% of people asked on a separate survey said they wouldn't take a job if it didn't offer any remote work flexibility. Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's certain jobs, certain industries that you just can't work remote. And then you do have those companies that are so specific of you have to be in office, even though so many of the jobs can be done from home, which means you also miss out on such a talent pool, because now you're kind of confined to one, who wants to go into an office, but two, kind of more of a geographical location, versus expanding that, potentially getting greater talent, because now, the world's your oyster kind of vibe. Anyone's available for that remote role. Interesting. 44% I feel like is still high though for not allowing any remote work. I'd love to see a breakdown of that, of how many of that 44% it's just not an option in the space that they work in, versus how many it's like a conscious choice of we're just not going to do that. We're just rejecting remote work altogether. 6, true or false, women own 10% of businesses in the US. This number's false. So it's actually not 10%, it's 26%, and it continues to grow according to Forbes, which we'd love to see. Women-owned businesses, shout out to you. Number 7, true or false, small businesses make up half of the jobs worldwide. What do you think? This one threw me off a little bit, because it is true, but I thought it was false when I first read it. So according to the World Bank, small and medium businesses employ 50% of people globally and make up 9 out of every 10 companies, which makes sense because you don't have as many people working in a small business, so every 9 out of 10, yeah, that tracks. The same article says it attributes the main reason people start companies is because they want to become their own boss, which makes sense. I mean, go the entrepreneur route if you want to kind of make your own schedules, own your own time, be your own boss, versus working for someone else, which I could make a whole other video on, because I feel like there are so many pros and cons to being your own boss and being an entrepreneur and having a small business. And then there's so many pros and cons to working more for someone else or in a corporation. And there's no right or wrong with either of them. It just whatever makes sense for you and what you're looking for and what your priorities are. Number 8, true or false? Amazon is the world's largest employer in terms of number of employees. Just gonna give you a stare down while you think about this one. It's false. It's false. Yeah, Walmart is still the largest employer with 2.1 million employees, which is still approximately 600,000 more than Amazon currently. Yeah, that's a lot of employees. You definitely would not know every single coworker, or even a large portion of them working there. True or false? Half of employees will quit or would quit after receiving inadequate appreciation from their manager. Half of employees. This is false. According to Apollo Technical, a staggering 79% of employees will quit after receiving inadequate appreciation from their manager, that is a large number. And can you relate to that? Not feeling appreciated by your manager in whatever way you feel appreciation, whether that's, words of affirmation. We're getting into love languages. No, but if you're not feeling that sense of appreciation from your manager, from the work that you're doing, would that attribute to you leaving a job or looking for something else? Because 79%, according to this study, said, yeah, that would force me to change my career path, or not career path, but change my current job or manager or what have you. I feel like that's relatable. Have you ever left a job for this reason? Okay, this is our last one. If you haven't got a ton of these correct, we have one more shot here. So, true or false? Only 20% of companies on the S&P 500 published a CSR, so a corporate social responsibility. Only 20%. It's a pretty low number. Yeah, that's false. That is absolutely false. That number, though, was true in 2019 to that 20%, but now it's up to 90% of companies, according to the Harvard Business School. Companies are getting a little bit more transparent about the corporate social responsibility. It's becoming more of I don't even know if it would be legally if they have to. I'm not quite sure of all the laws behind it in terms of what needs to be disclosed, but I feel like it's becoming more important for both customers but also employees to understand, what's this company doing for their corporate social responsibility? What is their impact in the world? We're getting a lot more curious, which I love, about companies' impacts and, the behind the scenes of their impacts on people and the planet and in society in general. And a lot of people, want to work for a company that they believe is doing good versus a company that doesn't really have any mind for corporate social responsibility. So we're up to 90%. And I'm hoping we see that number grow. I'm like, when are we going to get to that 100% point? I feel like we'll get there soon, especially if we've seen that jump from 20% in 2019 to now 5 years later, 90%. I feel like there's probably a lot of different things that are putting pressure on companies to release this information, probably a little bit legal, but also just people in general putting more pressure on companies to be like, I don't want to buy if I'm not believing in the company behind the scenes. And we just have so much more access now to companies' impacts and really seeing them and talking about them. So that was our last true or false question. Did you learn something new? I certainly did. And this has been a great way to start the day for me. Maybe not for you, or maybe it is for you. Anyways, I'm going to stop yapping. I'm going to go back to answer some emails because it's been one of those weeks for me. The inbox is a little bit full right now, so we're going to try to get her back to 0 unread messages, which I know is ambitious, but here we are. I appreciate you being here as always, work besties. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your support, and we'll see you in the next video, okay? Toodaloo.